Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Higher State Show. Today, guest Brian Baird. I said his name right this time around, I believe. He is the man with many downloads, and we just talked. I'm asking how should I introduce you? The man with many heads, but he said the man with many downloads. So there we go. So thanks for being here. My name is Jarne. You find me on Healing or at Healing Magic 27 on YouTube and Instagram. And let's go. We will just have a free-flowing conversation talking about higher states, how we can reach higher states, what's important. And Brian, do you want to keep going where we ended in the conversation that we had before?
Well, no, I'm done for the day. It was nice talking to you.
See you next week.
Yeah, so I mean, we were all over the place before, and you and I have long talks all the time anyway. So it's like one of the beautiful parts about knowing people and talking to people and getting their stories and sharing your stories and things like that is, for me, so many people are caught up in money as the arbiter of their success, or um, maybe even for them a measure of their freedom. And I do believe that the people who have more money have a kind of freedom that is available to them, because they're not they're not really concerned about their transportation choice or how much it costs or things like that. But ultimately, what I think that the truest currency, the one that gives us the most freedom, the one that gives us the most access to kinds of abundance that go beyond money, is relationships, quality
No,
relationships.
no.
And not every relationship, even quality relationships, necessarily has to be a long one. I could have a conversation with a stranger on a train platform for 30 seconds and have been somehow or other involved in a positive experience for somebody that they take with them for the day or the rest of their lives, and they too for me. Inside of that philosophy, I have a friend of mine who has a philosophy called the one. And I actually like to talk about being the one, which comes from her philosophy, although it's something that's kind of been ingrained in me over the years, long before she just kind of did a nice way of summing it up. And maybe if she get her as a guest on your show. But being the one is where you show up in each conversation, whether it's you presenting to many or you present or talking to one. When you show up in those conversations, you're showing up with faith, the faith or the trust that that conversation was going to be important in some way. It could be that I know somebody who can help that person with that thing that's on their mind, whether it's health, food, directions, relationship worries, whatever the case be. It could be I'm the person to do that. I don't ever know it. You've, but until you get in an engaged conversation with somebody, you don't know where that's going to go. However, one of the most interesting things is they might be the one for you. And that's a really powerful construct, is that I'm showing up to see if I can be of service, yet they might be of service to me. And sometimes, if not every time, people are being of service to both parties, that the conversation creates this loop of being connected.
I think this is generally the way how it works. What we give out is what we receive, but we always benefit both parties if we're aware of it or not, benefit the same way, because there's always something to learn from everyone all the time. Like what I'm experiencing and I became more and more aware of in the last years, particularly. So we never know who we meet next, and we never know who's around the corner, or I don't know who you meet, who you can connect me with, right? When you already mentioned again, this lady who potentially could be on the podcast. However, this again, like we never know how this relationship could develop later during the day or during the year, during the life. Might not be now, but maybe it might come around the corner in a few years. And I think it would be ignorant to just say, oh, just a stranger. I don't know. I don't need to know because how do we know, right? How do we know?
How do you know? Well, I mean, in a way now, based on what I'm describing, you kind of do know. You just don't know what the vector of that exchange
And
is.
do you have to know what?
No,
Exactly.
no, no.
And many people try to know, or like they assume that they need to know, and then they think like, oh, anyway. So they
Yeah,
miss out on many opportunities because of the pre-assumption of what might be in it for them or not.
there you had it. The I you're going to experience this when you're looking for people to be guests on your podcast too. They're going to ask. Sometimes they'll ask you questions like, "How many people listen to your show? How many people are in your audience?" Because they're already in the calculus. Is the reason for me to be on your show is for me to extend my audience and therefore get more access to whatever money, influence, whatever they're looking to do. So their calculus is how can you help me if I'm going to be on your show? You know, it's has nothing to do with if I'm on your show, I might change somebody else's life just in what I say. It has, so my philosophy in these things is
And this is why I usually try to get the people on it who are already warmed up and who are on a similar length wave that
yeah,
I am, because it is about the contribution and the service and what we have to share and to give to the world. Yeah.
right. I have no doubt that many people who've been on my show will have larger audiences on their shows because I'm only doing the show in a format, long conversation format, kind of like what we're doing here, but it's like a long conversation format with a simple starting theme. And then, and seeing where it goes. And then there may be a day, and some long format shows take a long time to get traction. That's another challenge. So like most people you'll see they're putting out their shorts. Why? Because it's easy for people to get baited and hooked on things and things like that. Long conversations don't quite do that. So anyway, um, the fact is that some of the people who are going to circle through my show and things like that will end up with a podcast with extraordinarily sizable audiences. And since there is the math of YouTube contribution, bless them for that part of their journey. That's it's not for me. My show is not the reason. YouTube is not the. I use YouTube. YouTube is not the reason for my show. It's just the place to park it so I can share it. So, and I just know that people who listen to the show, somebody will get something from the conversation. So, yes, you're right. Your show should be about people who are aligned with you, but sometimes you might end up being interested in having something with a bit more controversy attached to it. Not because it's directly helpful to somebody who could listen to your show. It might be indirectly helpful in the sense that the controversy itself gives somebody room for thought that, excuse me,
It's
that will
okay.
later.
Yeah. I see where you're going there. I mean, it's somehow like we're gravitating towards different things, right? We want to experience new things constantly. This is the way that we grow. So I hear what you're saying there, and I definitely will have controversial people eventually also that I'm going to talk with, or even people who are coming from another angle, right? Who are more into like I'm all about like I mean you know it. I'm pretty much learning to translate the spiritual knowledge, my spiritual awareness into the physical realm. This is where I'm at. And many people come from the whole other direction.
Other
So
direction. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
there could be a great conversation from both
And I think
sides to find together somehow.
it's a brilliant place to be coming from too, because there is this movement right now is get into the light, get into the light, get into the light, get into the light, become, they had all this other stuff. But we're here as human beings. And I'm not saying that we need to be animalistic or hedonistic or any of these other things. What I just like in my own current state, in my own current journey, um, one of the things that has come for me is I've been taking my body, my vessel for this journey, for granted. Not totally abusive, not so much granted, like, but it's just almost like I know if I get in to the car, turn the key or push the button, the engine's going to start and I'm going to go. Well, there are times when it hasn't been quite so easy. Need to, so take the car to get it serviced, which kind of has been how my body's been going for the last couple of years. And it seems like I'm now back into way better shape. But I have a stronger appreciation for what I need to do as a human being in order to sustain my journey physically. So despite all of my spiritual growth, and I've had some extremely accelerated, I think kind of like the awakening you and I've talked about in your own journey has happened equally as fast just later in my own journey. So like, you have the blessing of having exposure to all this awakening at a very, very powerful age where, and I'm not saying that my age isn't powerful either. It's just that the, although things can change medically and scientifically and other things like that, my window for contribution is likely shorter than yours because of my age. So, so suddenly I'm not taking my body for granted in the same way. I'm actually sensing it, feeling it in ways like, for me, it was like, what are your emotions? What are your thoughts?
But
What
many people
is,
don't even do that,
well,
right?
I mean,
Many
for
people
me,
are like mind body connection isn't even there. So if what I want to go now is how has it been before for the people who are, I mean, the more aware you become about yourself, I mean, automatically your spiritual self somehow becomes more present and you acknowledge and honor yourself in a different way. Though, how would you say was the transition from living a life at, I don't know, 10 years ago or 12 years ago, however, I think you started your journey how long ago?
well, technically, I've been probably on this journey before I even got here. But
You,
yes, but this is like, but when you're talking about when did I have an awakening,
yeah.
there's not a clear, like,
It wasn't like a event and there it was like a gradual
series of
progression
door
or
openings, though. There were these dramatic moments
yeah.
that took place, and some of is in my book. I have a book series that I'm working on for discussing the actual awakening process, and then
Which will be very beneficial for many people because
yeah,
like to see those steps and people love to relate, right?
right. So uh, I could spend a couple hours just talking about those awakening moments, but it's just like along the way there were these things that kind of like they registered unconsciously at the time, and now I look back and go, oh, I can see how that was an important step. Like
What's the most compelling one?
I became a father.
Okay.
I so
And what did
so
the
I
child teach you?
well, I'll go through that, sort of a short version of it. So I did not want. So here's one of those things that the way my journey, my early part of my journey is I had a father who was very rageful, with often no real reason to be rageful, like just just the energy of who he was rage. He just carried it around with him, and if something made him explode, he exploded. And as a kid, I was the guy who was often in the room, so I would, and he loved the belt, right? So he would whip the crap out of me at a drop of a hat, type of thing. And then and I, for years, by the way, I carried around that as a suppressed thing for me. So it made me go into my 20s and 30s, mostly 20s or so, with also my own set of rage because of the violation and the powerlessness and all those things that were going on at the time. But the thing is that um, I decided at a fairly young age that I did not want to have kids because I had seen family dynamics over the years and realized that most of the time, the way you were reared is the way you reared your kids, that it was cyclical. And I
So
had,
was this the perception or the reality?
it is a reality. if you watch,
part
I
of
mean,
it, but was it true for you on your journey then?
it didn't have to be. I'm just saying it was what I had observed. And so my calculus was, I have no control over this, so I might as well just not have kids so that I don't do to kids that which was done to me.
Yeah.
So my seeking out women in my journey was to seek out women who didn't want kids. So, and by and large, that was true. I had a few along the way who wanted to have kids, and those relationships weren't designed to last. And not necessarily for that reason, could be other reasons too. But it just, so I eventually met a woman who, she wanted kids with a giant S, kids with a big S on there. She wanted kids, and I just really, we had a lot of common ground. I liked being with her. And so I said, I kind of changed my calculus. Okay, so in order to avoid me becoming the victimizer like I felt like I would be because I didn't realize how much I'd worked out, by the way. So I became a parent at 42. So by then I had worked out a lot of this stuff, but I still had this calculus is that I was going to circle with making the money and let her raise the kids, that I would be kind of a distant parent. Um, so that's sort of the setting, the stage setting for the next part of the conversation. So tell me how that sounds to you right now.
How that sounds for me is again like it's an assumption out of the insecurity that started for you being a child and not learning what it is to trust and what it is to have a proper relationship between child and a parent, right?
Right.
Without putting
You hit the
any
nail on the
gender on
head.
it. Hmm.
Probably one of the most common keywords in everybody's journey. There are a couple of others: abandonment, betrayal, blah, blah, blah. But probably one of the most common keywords in anybody's journey is the word trust. For the most part, things happen along the way or happen before we got here or were imprinted on us in other ways or whatever the case may be, where we are challenged with trust. And not just trust with parenting, or it's trust in all kinds of ways. Trust
Mhm.
around money, trust around peers, trust around, I don't know, salesmen, salespeople.
Trust in
So whatever,
yourself.
or or ultimately that's where it goes anyway. All relationships start with self. So the thing that, so going back to this thing, was my wife and I were not conceiving, biologically conceiving. So we had a friend of ours who started the adoption process for a child from China. And in some place in the back of my mind had always been the story that my daughter would be adopted. I didn't realize and I say this is really weird that it was there. It was kind of like a dream that had been sort of, I had like woken up one day with this dream about having been an adoptive parent. What I didn't know is that that was an insight into the future, because we did adopt on the same cycle. We adopted alongside my wife's friend and got a little girl from China, and something changed right there. So you can say when you talk about these awareness moments, there were others that were before this, little tiny door opening of experiences to awareness and things like that. But I raced when we were at the adoption agency offices in China, waiting for them to bring our children. When they brought her into the room, I beat my wife by huge distances in time to scoop her up and hold her. And here I am. The nature of my journey is I am the center of the universe at this point. Despite any door openings, I'm the center of the universe. Everything is about me, very reactive. So, and in that instant, there was a sensation. It was a pop in my left ear, like I can't explain it, but there was an audible pop in my left ear, and this sense of inversion, almost like dysphoria, like disconnection, and a realization for that ever so brief moment that I'm no longer the center of the universe. Which I think is what happens as we start to become more harmonized. So it's not that that somebody else was the center of the universe. It's that I was no longer the center. I was now part of the connection, part of the process, part of the thing. It was, again, a door opening and then the door closes again. But what happened in that moment was recognition that all of my precepts somehow or other needed to be figured out better, because I had this calculus that I was not going to be a parent. Then I had this calculus is that I'll be a distant parent. I'll just make the money. And now I have a brand new calculus that was fairly quickly inserted into my being was I need to show up for this little girl differently than I would have if I stayed on the thought processes I had before. So I'll sum it up with this. I grew up with my daughter.
This is so key. Like, I mean, okay, I like where we're going. Children are such a great teacher. And how old has she been when she came to you?
13 months.
Yeah, okay. So pretty early. And for me now, I'm super excited seeing the children of my sister very shortly as well, 4 and 1 years old, two boys. But sharing space with an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old right now teaches me so much. And I mean, so much, because I do see the dynamics as well. And then having the mother here as well, and then just seeing the dynamics and seeing the behaviors, and really seeing how knowing they are and how much they grow together through their stuff. Let's just call it stuff. So, and I mean, the love that we generally experience for children because of their innocence, because of their expression, free spirits, it's different than what we kind of have. Like, we don't perceive ourselves as that when we're growing up, right? We usually don't do this. Like, not a lot of people are seeing this. I haven't had much joy as well in my life, because I have always been very aware, and I thought I'm is it me or is it them? Like, this is the perspective that I came from. So knowing now what I'm talking about is basically everything that I always already knew as a child is now what I'm as an adult translating. So I had this knowing my whole life. However, children, they do have that knowing, and particularly in their first years when they're pure, before we or information enters their being, and then they're shaping their identity around the information they're surrounding, the people that they learn from, right? It is fascinating how fast they develop layers, but also how fast they can adapt in surroundings, how fast they can adapt with, or like learn new informations. So how did the speed of her growing up and learning, when you say you grew up together, how did it relate to you and her journey in terms of growing together personally?
Well, there's a song by Whitney Houston that has this lyric, the children are our future, they teach us well.
Yeah.
And I think, and I just thought of that lyric now. It's not like I've been carrying that one around with me for a while, but it just was playing in my head, as you were talking. And one of the things that, when I say I grew up with my daughter, I was still her parent. I still had my own previous knowledge and experiences and some developed wisdom. The thing that's really that was part of the growing up wasn't so much knowledge in the head sense. It was knowledge in the heart sense. So when I say I grew up with her, I got a chance to discover an emotionally constructive side to me.
Mm.
And it took a while because now she's 21 now. So you figure out it's been about 20 years that I've been journeying with her, and a little over 20 years now. And the, um, the way the universe the universe created this construct is that when she showed up, she's not biological, yet in every way she's still my daughter. And it not being biological or blood or whatever you want to call it related to me hasn't been at all important. I only say it because it seems important to others at times. Like I don't feel like, oh, she's not mine. Like I don't feel because she didn't get generated from my loins that she's not my kid, or that another kid would have a different weight if they were biological. I don't have that at all because it's 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 she's just every bit mine. But there's some things that show in how when we journeyed as my wife and I, then wife and I, we're divorced now a little over 5 years, but it's it showed a kind of blood. Let me call it spiritual blood or emotional blood or something to that effect that takes place.
A bond.
Is it was a bond, but it was still kind of a significance that goes beyond just knowing somebody. We have so much common ground in terms of interests, for example, like sci-fi. Some of it would be just basically Star Wars or Star Trek or these other things, but we also have common language, like when we have similar tastes in food. And it's not because she grew up with me, because there are things that I eat that she can't stand. She doesn't like tomatoes at all. But
But
there's so
they're
many other,
energetics that you just align with
there's
each
a,
other.
yeah, there's an alignment of sorts that has
Yeah.
taken place in our journey. Now she's growing up and being in her own space and becoming her own person. So I'm way, way, way pulled back on her journey. I'm just here if she wants to chat or get together. And we get together once in a while. But I'm at a place now where, and I'm good with this too. It's like, I don't need to be a smothering parent because I miss her. I just go like, hey, when you're ready to chat, let's chat. I haven't had talked to you in a while, um, so the other part about this, but the thing you asked is like, what does that really mean? Is like growing up with her. I grew up with her because I found my heart at the genuine level and not the protected level. Like we get I've heard the Dalai Lama say the journey of our lifetime is from our head to our heart. But I would like to redefine that and say the journey of our lifetime is from being reactionary to responsive. Because so often our head isn't controlling the show. So the question comes down to is are we reacting to things that are making us afraid, or are we responding to things that bring us to love? And
I hear where you're going there.
and that's been what's happened over the last 20 years, and it's been an accelerated curve. Like you see,
Cool.
awakening, wake, now very awake. It's still
Yeah.
more awake to go. Like we're always works in progress. So, you know, I've and for me it's asymptotic. If you look at the math word asymptosis, or it's like, so like so it's been like a doubling effect. So it was very, very, very accelerated over the last few years compared to where it was in the beginning of this. And it wasn't just with my daughter. As I said, there were some door openings to this even earlier. And because of how reactionary I was, there are a lot of people who are reactionary who will go to the grave reactionary. Their egos are so fragile and have been so steeped and surrounded in protection that they're not able to ever release that protection enough to have those awakening moments. And so much of my work, not all of it, but much of my work is guiding those people who are at the edge of awareness into awareness so that they don't stay in that reactionary state. I can't hear you.
Which one am I? Yeah, yeah. I could which one am I grabbing now in this conversation? Because you mentioned a few things and I could touch on heart opening. I could touch on my journey, how it was me begin of 20s or basically moving out of home and not having contact with parents and the reasons why, right? And they're all
And
interrelated
just so you know,
anyway.
when I was 15, I left home. I was done with family.
Hmm. I
So,
mean,
so you can see there's probably going to be if we spend enough time on creating cross stories, we'd find out, ooh, and I have that in common. You and I have that in common. You and I have that in common. Oh, that's not the same, but it showed up for me over here. Like,
mhm.
so I don't think our journeys are necessarily unfamiliar to anybody, although every one of our journeys is unique enough that it's our journey that we get to use uh,
If
for the
if we
purpose.
if we allow it to come into us, right? Like many people are closed-hearted, and you may relate to it because of I just could hear it in the story that you say, like when she came in and your heart just reacted on a whole nother level. And this is eventually then something that you haven't experienced before ever. And I have had a similar situation, although I always have been very sensitive. I cried a lot. I've been a very sensitive child, which maybe us like differ to a certain degree. However, the moment that my heart opened, I just wanted to share that beauty with other people because once you open the heart in that way, you have the connection not just to yourself, but therefore again to other people as well. The moment that we learn to love ourselves, right, is then the moment that we can go out there and love others from a deeper level. Many people have their heart covered and they're afraid to open it up because they have been hurt in the past or their ancestors have been hurt in the past and there has been something going on in the family that hasn't been looked at yet or they
Right.
didn't want to talk about it. Maybe they look at it, which is the one thing, but though talking about it is the other. So thanks for sharing that because I believe that this is very, very valuable and many people experiencing this that when a child enters the world, right, and you just have the connection, you feel if it's if you have if it's yours, right? If it's biologically or you adopt the child, I believe the connection is there because it is love and it's pure and it's beautiful and it really helps us to learn what love means on a deeper level. The first time that I have had the son of my sister in my arms, I'm like, whoa, this is something so beautiful, right? My heart was open, he was calm, and it was just like I knew him. And I still do now. I haven't seen him for 3.5 years, but there's this energetic bond that I have with him, although he's not my son, though I know him energetically and I feel and I understand what he is going through when I do hear stories from my mom or my sister about him. So relationships like and love and family doesn't even need to be from the same blood, I believe. Right?
Totally.
You
I
just
totally, my
sense
journey
it.
confirms it.
So what is what is your perspective on because people think, oh yeah, they're my family. So now I have to hang out with them because they are my family. I believe many people have that. But
Right.
friends for me have always been very strong for me. And I felt like family with friends always when we had the same vibe, right? The same vibe, the
Mhm.
same vibration. We just like the same things. So therefore, we just spend time together.
Friends are the family we make, right?
Yeah,
So, and then you're
we
absolutely right
choose.
that, you know, and,
I mean, we choose on a deeper level the other family as well. But
right. There are things about it, like, um, a couple of things based on what you were saying is I wanted to sort of address in short format, but just the idea is that, you said you had grown up or you've identified that as you were growing up that you were sensitive. And I would argue that, um, everybody is sensitive. It's just that the distinction is that you had some openings in that sensitivity that allowed you to still feel the world, whereas a lot of people wall that up so that they
is
can't
it
feel it.
is it from your perspective empathy?
I think we're all capable of empathic
Yeah, we are. I
things.
believe so too. Though, again, also due to whatever we are here to experience on a deeper level from the soul. Therefore, we do have differences in how we're using it. Some of us choose not to experience this as a child. Some souls come in and they do have even past life experiences where they even haven't been used that. So then for them, it is now in this lifetime to rediscover, right? So I came in and I had this, and I'm like, whoa, I feel everyone and everything, and this is so weird. And this is like, wow,
Well,
they feel
you've been
so much
taught,
pain, and I'm like, whoa, is it mine or what?
so you medicated against that.
Yeah.
And we all medicate differently. So for me, my medication was rage. My
Mm,
medication was super protective walls and whatever you want to call them. My medication was the flavor of fragile usual protection, we'll call popularly narcissism. My medication was, and that included in that was the medication of always being right, always being strong, always being smart, no matter what. If you tried to show that I wasn't strong, wasn't smart, wasn't right, I would gaslight the hell out of you in order to be right, in order to be strong, in order to be smart, or at least appear that way. So other people will medicate with alcohol. Other people will medicate with, you
cannabis.
know, elements of other stuff, right? Some of us will medicate with sex and gambling or
They do,
these other
yes.
things. So, so what ends up happening is and I like to, I basically have in my
Well,
own
we
journey, and
do.
for those who
Yeah.
don't understand why I'm talking this way is I'm a hypnotherapist by training along the way. So that I've always looked for a way to kind of make it easier for us to explain the human condition to people. And I like to talk about this medication thing because when people get to hear it, they get to go, oh, that's why I do that. It's not that I'm weak and don't have any control, is I'm still protecting myself
They think
from
they
whether
have to
what
protect themselves, which is again the illusion of it, right? I chose to protect myself from smoking pot for 7 years daily, where I just like escape basically the reality or like the truth, right? I created another reality to kind of hide, and I was hiding my own emotions, and I suppressed them through medication. And then other people medicate with sugars, right? They like to sit on the couch and watch TV, can also be a medication because you just sit there and turn off and eat your package of
absolutely.
chips. Yeah.
Hey, that sounds attractive.
Yeah, depend.
Potato chips and TV. There are times when even with awareness, you just sometimes you need a shutdown day.
Oh,
But
bro,
the
like, and this is something that I, to bring a little bit more about my journey, I was when I became aware of how everything I do kind of was like fake, or like I had to relearn so much. I didn't allow myself to eat chocolate. I didn't allow myself to eat chips. I didn't allow myself to watch TV or whatever. Like I just went all in. And this is just type of my character as well. I'm a fire sign. I seem calm in the outer, but though if you really, if I have something to focus on, like I can go for it. And it's very difficult to stop me. Usually I stop when it's too late, too late, and then I'm like, okay, now I have to kind of rewrite a few things. So what I did is I overwhelmed myself with associating negative emotion, or like I forbid myself, which is again negative way, rather than
yeah,
I
it's a
just don't
resistance.
want to do it anymore. I'd love to just stay sugar free rather than no, I have to stay sugar free, right? Not
Right.
that I love to eat more healthy. No, I have to eat more healthy. So that was the way that I talked to myself. Then I kind of built up that dynamic that I was one day I just became weak and I'm like, wow, I could eat all of it at the same time. So I had this highs and lows and highs and lows, and I was bouncing between it. And now in the last year, half a year, I more and more really found my balance in a more soothing way. to not overwhelm my system, because our body somehow has to catch up. And yes, I'm human, although I know what I'm capable of doing, and I have that vision, and I want to eat as pure or be as pure as I can be, right? Though I'm a human, and my body
Right.
has its physical things to deal with.
As you described that, sort of like all in on a new way after having medicated in the other way for a long time. So in another way, so I wanted to kind of add some clarifying points about this medication concept. So you had used the word is that you were medicating, you were doing these things because of the truth of what was happening in your journey. I would say is the truth you were speaking of was the pain.
Yeah,
So because there's other kinds of truth too. So like the truth of who you really are is, I actually am very comfortable with saying this. The truth of who we really are is pain free. It's so there, you can actually start to medicating not against the truth of pain, but start medicating for the truth of who we are. So I always describe this as simply we medicate to cope or we medicate to heal. We still medicate. And I'm using the word medicate very, very loosely. I'm not talking about pharmaceuticals or anything like that. I'm just talking about the mechanism of introducing ideas and feelings and working on those things in such a ways that we either are coping them with them or we're getting to the other place. We're giving ourselves a pathway to a truth that isn't steeped in pain or discomfort um, or other forms of challenges. And it doesn't mean that when you're sitting in this other truth, which you could call spiritual or whatever the case may be, that you'll never have pain. No, people we love will leave for a variety of reasons. Relationships that don't work, somebody passes and moves on to the next realm, whatever the case may be.
different, like I focus on different things, right? I'm changing the way I live my life. So I want to make business, they want to stay there, or I go right and they want to go left, and like we can still be in love with each other, though we don't have to walk the same path any longer. And they serve their path for a reason,
Right.
right? And
But
we
it's still a
choose,
loss.
hey,
It's still a loss. If you, even when you diverge, when somebody goes, oh, it's, you know what, the pathway you're on is no longer aligned. I love you, bless you. I'm moving this way. You go that way. There's still a loss. So we will still feel pain. We could try to be, we could try to minimize the pain through metaphysical analysis and all this other stuff because, like I think that a friend of mine passed away at the early part of last month and, or actually 2 months ago today. And I miss her. I would like to pick up the phone and call her because we would have these conversations and things like that. But the thing is that what was easier for me not to go into this kind of pile of grief that some people we have friends in our circle that still are broken up over her her passing in some very harsh, not so hopeful ways. Like
which
they're
is
kind of in a very
which is a whole nother topic to talk about, right? Like, I mean,
right.
on this
But
topic is with attachment and detachment. I think it's a whole nother conversation.
so I feel
Um,
like, but the reason why I'm able to mitigate the human side of this loss is because I feel very strongly that my relationship with her was more than just the physical connection, conversations. She was about, she was 9 years older than me. So we had, it's, there was kind of a natural order to her leaving before I do, so to speak. And it wasn't expected. It was very dramatic, 40-day hospital stay and gone type of thing. And, but the thing that made it easier for me to not, I can't say mitigate the loss, but I just transformed the grief, was realizing that she was in many ways still with me because of my beliefs in the metaphysical. So because of the framing of how I journey now, I can weather the loss of human beings, whether it's relationship or other things, very, very differently. My brother, he's a couple years younger than me, not quite, almost 2 years younger than me. I've had to shut the door on my relationship with him,
Hmm.
which in some ways would have been easily a kind of a loss. And I could have been like, well, I'm going to show him this truth, because there's a very high level of toxicity through his journey, which I can say, I can see where the threads of that came from because I know about my early journey. But on the other hand is that he's in that reactionary place that doesn't look like it'll ever get healed. So he's in that medicating to cope thing probably till the day he dies. And we have to be able to release ourselves to the ideas. We can't
Hmm.
save everybody.
So
And
blessings,
so,
blessings shall be over him.
yeah,
And
let's send him all that love and energy.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah,
I
yeah,
just
yeah.
do not need him in my life. And this is an example of where blood isn't as relevant because he is so toxic that there is no engagement without the toxicity rising even higher.
No,
He
yeah,
is
like
too,
to
and I'm not, if there is healing for him, I am not the provider
to bring it
because
to something like relatable right now is like because it's an awesome topic. Like toxic people, we all are surrounded by some toxicity all the time. So what are we doing to protect ourselves from toxic people? Because if people choose to be toxic and if they want to feel those feelings, it is up to me if I take the invitation or not. If you want to make me angry, right? If you come with your toxicity and you kind of, I don't know, push like negativity onto me, like I want to stay I want to really vibrate on the most highest level that you can imagine. Like, and this
yes,
is like, I won't stop ever for anything less, and I won't settle for anything less. So this is my type of thinking. And then I can name my truth to the people, and then it's up to them. Right?
right.
I can give my hand if they want to take it, if they want to come up, okay, yes. If they, if we climb a mountain together, I can reach my hand, but they have to climb the mountain alone. I can help them for a step or for this little passage, whatever, if they want to, because it's again about their want, because if they don't want, they don't want. And then for
Well,
us
I
to
think
waste
most
our
people don't.
energy
The
doesn't
challenge
matter.
here, I think most people are in that reactive state, have no idea that they don't want it or want it. They're not. I know you're using the word they choose to be this way, but I would argue that they don't have enough awareness to make a choice.
Naya, because I talk about soul level. Like the conversations
Yeah,
that I
yeah, yeah,
have are
yeah, yeah.
rarely about like the egoic part of our I do that as well. Though if the soul in this lifetime chooses to go dark or light, like this is the decision that children even are making to bring it back. I mean, you growing up and having children, they do play, they do test their borders, and some people, they just energy vampires and they choose to grab on other people's energies, and this is how they feed their energy, which is more of the evil type of aspect that we do see, and this is God and evil. Am I choosing to be godlike, what I do and I strive for, and I really work on developing myself to be as pure as I can on daily life, not that I don't have my mistakes, right? But I really look to learn out of every mistake. And I think those people that you just mentioned, your brother eventually, those people have difficulties to just face and to reflect and to choose to go that
However,
way.
that might be part of the plan.
Yeah,
Again, it's
yeah,
like when you use the word choice at the spiritual or the soul level, I go, okay, that one I can buy into because
yeah.
there was one of my door openings, which was an unconscious experience at the time, was when my father, who was the person I described before, he I just basically stopped communicating with him for nearly 15 years. And then he circled back into my journey with a metastasized cancer that was at this point accelerating to kill him. And so I allowed that connection. I allowed that connection back into my journey, which kind of brought my brother into it as well. So the thing is that when my father passed, which was probably maybe about a year and a few months after my father and I got reconnected, um, the the memorial service, he passed away in December, and so the following February we had a memorial service in his what was his final hometown, the town he picked for where he was going to live. And the you know, sometimes you go to a service for somebody who's passed and you can hear people who are like maybe either they're washing away their guilt or trying to keep a positive spin on things. So they'll say something about a person who was a son of a gun that, you know, like, that's not the guy. This guy is just blowing smoke, you know, that kind of thing. But the people who were in this church with him in his last few years, um, were describing a man I didn't really know. I kind of got some connection with who that was. So maybe there was a little bit of awareness that happened there. But I wondered, I've often wondered, one, is whether or not my estrangement from my father, it was a deliberate, I'm not going to talk to you again type of thing. We're done. Whether that somehow or other reached through all that toxicity and reactionary behavior and gave him enough food for thought to say, maybe I can do something different and maybe become a little bit aware, if not more aware. So they described, to see, this is the man I knew. If he had found a church that needed to be painted and they had a limited budget, he would have said, I can do the church. I can do your paint your church first. Just have to come up with $500. I'm just picking a number. Just have to come up with $500 and I'll get the church painted. He would get the $500 and then he would just move on. It is not an overt act of theft. It was more like he might have had the intention of painting the church, but then just realized that he had to go for the next thing of money to stay alive. So it was a survival thing. And the man they described was a man who didn't ask for any money and painted the church, who had limited funds, out of his own time and his own treasure. He even rented equipment to do this because the church wasn't a one-story building. So he rented a tall ladder and some other stuff he didn't have to paint this church. And when I heard this story, I had this, like, at the moment, it didn't consciously register with me. The conscious memory, the thing that registers, whoa, that's not the guy I knew. But years later, what registered with me is that, or what registered with me at the time unconsciously was, oh, if a man like that can be redeemed, I can be redeemed. So, and because remember now, I'm living in a very reactionary way, just like my father was. So there's this like linkages that takes place. So I believe that my father's journey was mapped out to be this abusive, reactionary, unaware, hyper unaware individual, and that he had a good chance of going to the grave that way based on the plan. Or maybe the plan was for him to have a partial redemption and awareness thing that infected me with the possibilities at an unconscious level. So we don't know for sure. But my brother, strangely, it's almost like the same program my father operated by was installed in my brother. It's unbelievable how similar they are. You would think it was genetic, how
But
similar they
like this is something that I do observe as well, and the more I'm doing the healing and I see the conversations with my parents now, and like I'm healing from certain behaviors, so I'm not not stuck in old ways that I did grow up with. And I do see this with my older sisters, two of them, both from my father's side. They do have this dynamic with my dad going on, which is like not too easy, right? So because they're mirroring each other and they kind of try to find like it is very reaction based and not much self-reflection. Or I wanted to ask you this question as well, because for me it goes into forgiveness, which the church is, like the Christianity is, it's based a lot around forgiveness as well.
It's supposed to be based on forgiveness.
Um, so
What
if
happens is another story, but its premise is forgiveness.
yeah, so to what is what experience did you had with forgiveness?
Well, here's the thing that um, as I, again, remember everything I've shared so far, this idea of how we medicate and all these other things inside the human frame, the human condition. Then there's the other part about is what is our purpose? Why are we here? What is the arrangement for our journeys? What is manifest destiny and what is manifest based on our own desires or whatever the case may be. So there's this whole idea, and I'm fairly comfortable and it resonates with me that we make contractual, in not to ink to paper in the same way we think about it as the human condition, but we make contractual arrangements with other soul parties, which sometimes you can call them soul families. And so my father on this earth was somebody who could have been my daughter in my last journey. Who knows what the relationship was, but my father on this earth, my biological father on this earth, was a man who was it was intentional for him to be that way. It wasn't it was designed to be that way because I would not be who I am today if they hadn't had the pins being pulled from all these things holding up what would have been just kind of die type journey. All the pins in the map, so to speak, were being pulled out, revealing the real map of what's going on. So I had all these cover things that were on the map, and I was pulling the pins off, and suddenly I see this
I
clear map of my
Oh,
journey.
okay. Now I get the analogy. I haven't understood the analogy
Yeah,
before, but
I wasn't being
now
clear.
I'm
That's not on you. That's
now
on
I'm
me.
getting it. Yeah.
So now what happens is when you look back and you go, that was the map that's deep down inside who I am and what I'm going and what my destination is and what I'm about and how I serve and those things that take place in our journeys, which could not have been recognized if I had not started pulling those pins that were covering creating these things on the map that were covering the real map. So now I can look back and go, my father, for all of his son of a gun behavior, that was part of what created me the son of a gun. And then his redemption moment was a door opening for my redemption moments and things like that. So if you talk to the people who knew me 20 years ago, I was a pure asshole. I'm not saying I was evil, but I was an asshole. Self-absorbed, self-medicating, self-protecting, all those other things that go with those kinds of energies. And then,
Based
you know,
around trust issues and trauma, basically.
exactly. And then, and grief,
N
trust,
n
trauma, and grief.
or not having grieved enough, right? Or not having
Well,
been
that
sitting
definitely was the case.
in the grieving process. Yeah.
I didn't process grief for over 5 decades.
Exactly, and this is
So,
usually what people do, and then the suppressed emotions comes out as anger. I wrote something today
or
about that actually.
illness, or illness. In my case, it's disease.
Disease,
So,
yeah.
so, um, so, and that would be another conversation is about my journey through these emotional discoveries and all those other things that were taking place. But the point I'm making is that tying to what you were saying is I'm agreeing that it is a choice at the soul level. But as we're journeying through this thing, so I would say that deep down inside, like using my brother, not trying to be judgmental, I'm just trying to assess. And we'll talk about forgiveness in a minute. So in my brother's journey, if he was able to kind of take the cover of the wound off and take a look inside, he would realize he was in really serious pain. But he's been putting so much salve and bandages and then taking oral, medications to not feel the pain of that wound or whatever the case may be. I'm being very visual here for this stuff, but if he'd had a chance to like take a look, he would say, oh, I don't like this pain. I want to do something about it, as opposed to just completely cover it up. And that's what creates toxicity. In my estimation or experience, has said as a hypnotherapist, is that the reason why people come off as toxic is because their protection mechanisms are so high and so enduring that they're unable to take a look at themselves. That self-awareness awareness in general, but self-awareness is the starting point
So on
for
two,
getting into a place of being able to start medicating to heal. Until you have some level of self-awareness, you will almost always medicate to cope.
okay, and to bring it to a smooth closing kind of type of, I mean, this is, I think many people have to hear those words that you've just mentioned, or like the story that you tell for them to connect with. Out of my own observation, are people not allowing themselves to grieve? People run away from the grieving process, or from actually feeling and sitting in the pain firsthand, or like seeing,
Well,
accepting it. However, let's, like, your last take on forgiveness, like the
so
importance. I want to make clear the
forgiveness, by
importance
the
of
way, is a
forgiveness.
medicate to heal thing.
Medicate to heal thing. Okay, so give me your perspective on like how it relates, how important forgiveness was on your journey then, as an end result of kind of, can I say,
Okay.
kind of freeing yourself, freeing your spirit from the bondage that you have been in.
And then when you talk about medicating to heal, what really that means is that you're putting yourself on a path to a freedom position. Because we often attach, remember before, and maybe it was outside of this conversation, but before we were talking about the ideas that money can be a form of freedom. I think it was earlier in our conversation here that we were talking about for people with money, they have a certain kind of freedom, but it's actually, and I should say, it's actually a freedom that's attached to movement inside of geography less than it is about a freedom to move through relationships in a healthy way. So money does not guarantee healthy relationships. Money does give you certain kinds of geographic or other kinds of access like that. So that's a kind of freedom there, and that attracts a lot of people. If I have more money, I have more freedom. But the thing is that you don't have to have money to be free, because there's a kind of freedom that comes along that's embedded in our power, our individual certain power that comes from our personal unpainful truth, our sense of ability to love without any framing or conditions, our ability to trust, as we were talking about before, our ability to actually understand the power of who we are without it being a dark thing, that we can sort of see the power, the beauty of true power, where you can be so powerful, you can be vulnerable and nothing can hurt you. So
Vulnerability is key. Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
anyway, so the forgiveness thing as a medicating tool is really a path to freedom and love and all these other things. So as I was the forgiveness of my father was not about canceling what he did. Uh, when, originally I would have told you what he did to me as a child, and now because of forgiveness, he did it for me. My father was also a man steeped in pain. He was a man who was steeped in pain that he couldn't look at least in his early years. It was a My father was a man who the rage, as you had talked about, when you bottle up this stuff, whether it's grief or other forms of emotions that are in the non-positive space, when you bottle them up, and often they get triggered by fear-based things. So the the rage that that man exhibited, and the fact that he inflicted that rage on me physically, it had to hurt him, because it wasn't healing. It wasn't even really even coping. It was just explosive expression of something that he couldn't even put words to, in my estimation. So what does forgiveness mean in this thing is that I can look back and go, it's not about letting him off the hook for how he behaved as a human being. It's about understanding how he behaved as a human being based on some of his human framing and histories, and maybe past lives or all generational stuff or whatever the case may be. It's also the likelihood that I arranged with him by contract for him to show up this way so I could have the lessons I'm having right now and share those stories and those things that make it so other people could actually have healing journey moments. And so he showed up the way he did for me. So look at the word forgiveness. He did what he did now
Forgive.
for
Yeah,
me
got it. Wow. Good one.
and gave me that gift. And I can then say thank you. And for that, I will give the gift back. And interestingly, I'm very confident that by this understanding here is that we have healed between the two of us, even though he's no longer physically here.
For sure you do. And brings me back to what I said earlier with why should I feel a certain way because someone makes me angry? How I connect the dot now is why should I feel a certain way because of the deeds that someone else did, where I had no real influence on it. So again, letting go of that feeling is because I don't have to own it, right? It is my decision to keep that feeling. But many people really the letting go part and the accepting part can be very difficult. So thank you for sharing, and I believe like heads up that you are able to share that journey. Many people yet have to learn to talk about their story and what they've been through if they choose to. What they don't have to for sure, but definitely is very healing. I think for you, for me, for the collective to share our stories and to really relate that we are all going through some things, but there's always, I think, the light at the end of the tunnel, and there's always a learning that we're going through. So if there is an advice, one short advice for the listeners that you would give after the conversation and what we've covered, what would that advice be?
If everybody likes to ask is what is the one piece of advice that you could give me to help me with my journey or help me understand my journey, and the first word that comes up every time is breathe.
There we go. Breath, guys. Focus on your breath. There you go. Thank you, Brian. Where can people find more about you? How can people, I mean, there's an email address, but where you tell us where can people connect with you?
Oh, my name is Brian, middle initial K, Baird, Baird. So you can go to briankbaird.com or milliondollarfeeling.com and reach out to me that way. There's um, there's places to schedule conversations if you'd like. I am taking on clients on a case by case basis. So it's not really, if you want to reach out to me, it's for a conversation in the beginning because I'm not always able to bring somebody on as a client. So I'm not here to market myself. Um, I'm here to make the world a better place. And so if my conversation with somebody might get them started, I'd love to have that conversation.
Alrighty, thank you so much. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching it. And yeah, see you in the next episode. Ciao, ciao.
Keep well.